So welcome to a new series. This is about tier lists and how the units stack. So we'll talk a little bit about how it works at the end, but basically there are three tiers: A, B, and C. A being good stuff, B being average stuff, C being not so good stuff, and there's also a S tier, which is like God tier, which is stuff off the top of the chart. So today we're going to be looking at knights. They are 3, 3, 4 up, so 3 hits, 3 attacks, and they have 4 up armor. They're 110 points, and they're used in most of the human-based armies. So Empire have them, Dogs of War have them, Araby have them, Witch Hunters have them, Bretonians have them kind of, but they have some drawbacks. But they're the same price and the same profile mainly. Also High Elves have them, and Vampire Counts have them. So they're in, what's 7? So roughly about a third, just under a third of all lists have access to knights. So we'll talk a little bit about what knights are, what the strengths and weaknesses, and then we'll talk about some tactics. So strengths of knights. The primary strength of knights is that they have a lot of attacks on a short base. So they're 20 mil facing. Obviously, if they charge a 40 mil facing, they're going to have twice as many dudes attacking on the same amount of basing. And they'll be doing, if they're charging, they'll be doing 4 attacks per stand. So if you're charging infantry, you've got 8, and they're attacking back with 3, effectively. So that's quite a big combat multiplier. They have high armor, which allows them to defend well. There are things with 3 up armor, but they're not that common. And they have mobility, which means 2 orders, which is only generally, so you've got a general on command 9, a 9 and then an 8. If you set up properly, you can move 60 centimeters and charge something for just a 9 and an 8, which is a whole lot of mobility. Or you can do exactly the same maneuver, 9 and 8, and get into a flank of something. But we call that the beach maneuver, and we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the combat examples. Weaknesses, they've got some terrain restrictions. Coming from fantasy into a Warmaster, one of the strangest things to get used to is you cannot go in terrain. You might feel that you want to go in terrain, you might feel like you should go and be able to go in terrain, but you can't. You do have terrain restrictions. You cannot get defended or fortified, you don't have access to support, and you have relatively large flanks. You have a 40 mil flank, whereas infantry have a 20 mil flank because your base is reversed. So you have relatively large flanks, and they're quite juicy targets. But that's the nature of the geometry of the game, so you can't have everything. So talking a little bit about tactics, if you can see here, we've set up facing a brigade of Empire crossbowmen with halberdiers in column behind. So we're set, you can imagine we're 30 centimetres away, so a single order away. And you might think, oh, we'll barrel in the front. Well, with Revolution, you only get 2 rounds of combat, so you will kill the crossbowmen, but they're being supported by the halberdiers. So even if we kill them with 1 round of combat, the second round of combat, if we zoom forward a little bit here to see the next picture, so we've gone in, we'll wipe out the crossbowmen, and then we're now fighting the 3 units of halberdiers in column. We won't kill them. We won't even come close to killing them. We might kill, I don't know, we might kill a stand of each, probably, on averages. And we won't take much damage back, and we won't have taken much damage back from the crossbowmen, but we might have lost a stand. And then we're in the difficult position that, what do we do now? Because we've got, on our right-hand flank, we have now got another brigade, a smaller brigade of handgunners and halberdiers. So if we stay where we are, we're going to get flank charged. So what do we do to prevent that? Well, we do the beach maneuver for a start, especially in Revolution. So instead of going straight in the front on a 9 or an 8, if you're using a hero, we go off to the flank. You have to imagine that's more than 20 centimetres because I had to do it for the photograph. So you go off to the flank, stay outside 20, and you order them in. So it's the second order, but now you're going in on the flank, and that changes things drastically, as you can see at the next picture. So we've now gone into the flank. We get a bit of stand and shoot, but because we've got a terrifying creature in with us, and because we're in a flank, we're only getting hit back by 1 dice per stand. Is that right? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, probably 1 dice per stand. So that isn't a lot. In fact, the crossbowman might be 2 dice. In the picture, I can't see it clearly enough from this one. But even if it's 2 dice, you're talking about only 5 dice of attack coming out against the knight. So that's only, what, 3 wounds split between the 2 units. 3 hits, sorry, and then they've got 4 up armor, so that's like 1.5. I mean, you're not taking a lot, are you? So let's assume we crush the crossbowmen and ding up a unit of halberdiers and then push forward. What will happen in Revolution is we will get to here probably, and that will stop, because this will be our second round of combat, and we'll probably crush some halberdiers. We might get into the second, pursue into the second lot of halberdiers, and we'll probably get rid of the crossbowmen, but that'll be us done. Now, in old-fashioned, good old vanilla Warmaster, you could just keep going, and there was no limit. There was no 2 rounds of combat. You could go until you chose to stop. So in old-fashioned vanilla Warmaster, this is what would happen next. You'd push on, and then you'd then push on into another brigade. And you've probably lost a stand of each by this point, but you're terrifying these idiots. So yeah, you get a little bit of stand and shoot again, but they just can't stop you eating them. So in old-fashioned vanilla Warmaster, which I heartily recommend that you play Revolution if you're not doing so, to prevent this kind of shenaniganry, because it really was a complete pain in the arse to defend against. They would just keep going. So you'd be taking here, you would literally be taking 2 attacks back. 1 from the halberdiers and 1 from the handgunners in this case. And so you're doing a minimum here of 16, and the griffins another 3, might have a sword on him 4. So that's 20 attacks, and you're taking 2 back. So what would happen? Over time, a couple of flank charges, you've taken out 6. You could easily take out 8 units with 1 flank charge from 2 units and a terrifying creature. So if you imagine you only need, say, 10 or 12 to break an army, if you can get into the flank of a couple of brigades with cavalry, that's the game. That's the game, and that's why Revolution had to exist. So on the flip side, how do you attack cavalry? Well, if you look at the picture here, we have a small brigade again, handgunners. I don't know why handgunners would be on the front, but that's what was to hand, so they're going in the front. Handgunners against 2 units of knights. So handgunners supported by halberdiers against 2 units of knights. This frontal charge is complete suicide for no other reason that A, you're not going to do anything and you're going to take a load of damage, but B, even if you win, you can't follow up. So it's a complete no-brainer. Never do this if you are fighting infantry against cavalry. What you want to do, similar again, beach maneuver, is you go off to the flank. So this will be a lot harder, because your first order will be, say we're using a hero, it'll be an 8, and the second order will be a 6, because now you're definitely going to be enemy near. Or if you're a general, the first order is 9, if you keep outside 20, and then the second order is 7. But doing it this way, we then charge into the flank. We are attacking for 12, and we're only taking 2 dice back. And now, admittedly, on this particular example, we don't have any armour on our handgunners, so we are going to take 1 or 2 casualties per turn, but we're going to do 12 attacks, 6 hits. We're going to take a stand per turn in return. So that's good odds. But in vanilla Warmaster, even if you did this flank charge, you couldn't pursue the cavalry, so they'd be away. Well, they'd be stood where they are, so they wouldn't be away, and you get to reform. But in Warmaster Revolution, we can actually go on and have a second round. So if you're really lucky, and you do enough wounds over 2 rounds of combat, so you've done, say, 12, 24 attacks, hit with 12, they've saved really badly and only saved 3, lost 9, you can then pursue into the next unit and get 9 attacks against 2 coming back. So another nice bonus of Warmaster Revolution is not only can you fight 2 rounds of combat if you get into the flank of a cavalry unit, if they're in line like these were, you can actually then advance into another unit of cavalry and have 2 more rounds of combat. And you might take another standoff then. So never, ever, 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 ever charge heavy cavalry in the front with infantry unless you've got no choice. Try and get round the flank. And yeah, the final picture here shows the problem with cavalry, especially heavy cavalry. I did play a game once where I was using a load of high elf silver helms. I mean, it was a cheesy list. I had maybe 10, 11, 12 units of silver helms, and a guy had a virtually he had a lot of huskars and other infantry. He had a Norse list, and basically there was no game to be had because we weren't using a scenario. It was in a tournament. He wouldn't come out of the woods because why would he? If he came out, he'd be ruined because the high elves would just get into his flanks, and the high elves couldn't go into the woods. So there wasn't a game to be had. But anyway, I thought I'd show that picture there. That sometimes you end up, if you bring a skew list with all cavalry, you end up in a position where you can't actually do anything. But if you play a tournament or if you play games with scenarios, that will prevent that kind of stuff happening because they've got to fight over the scenario. So how would I rate Empire? How would I rate Empire Knights or any of these knights? They're tier A. So they're not tier S because there's stuff above these, very similar profiles that maybe we'll get to in another episode. But they are as good as it gets. When you want something dead, when you want to claim objectives, when you want to give somebody a bloody nose, the best thing in the game for doing that are Empire Knights in the front. So I take 4 units in most army lists that I build if I have access to them. I would certainly have no problem taking 6, 8 or even more if you could find a reason to do it, or if you can stand the abuse you're going to take. As I say, once I'm sure I did as many as 12 silver helms in a list or something stupid. Yeah, but pound for pound, they're very good. In fact, they're so good that they're one of the things in the game that kind of causes consternation about how do we keep them under control. And I don't know the answer to that. They're kind of they're the benchmark that everything else is judged by, and they certainly are very, very good for their points. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll try and do one of these every week or so. Let me know if you like them, and like and subscribe and all that crap.